Hi, I'm Susie Garden, and this is the Ageless and Awesome podcast. I'm an age-defying naturopath and clinical nutritionist, and I'm here to bust myths around women's health and aging so that you can be ageless and awesome in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. The Ageless and Awesome podcast is dedicated to helping women through perimenopause and menopause with great health, a positive mindset, and outrageous confidence. Hit subscribe or follow now, and let's get started. Hello, gorgeous one, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ageless and Awesome podcast. This week I got inspired by a topic just this morning, actually, looking at gut health and weight and its influence on weight. This is actually a huge topic. I'm going to split this into two podcasts because there's just a lot to cover. It's relatively complex. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. But, you know, the thing is, when we're looking at the role of the gut, when most people think of gut health, they think of their gut, they think of digesting food. Now, they might think about the microbiome as well, but mainly we think about the gut and digestion. But the thing is, the role of the gut the more we learn, the more we realize how much we didn't know even 10 years ago. But we know now that the role of the gut is well beyond its ability to digest food. I mean, that's a massive thing as it is, because if we can't digest food, we don't have energy, we don't have all of the micronutrients we need to build good brain chemicals that impacts our mental health. It's just so important to be digesting our food. So that's a massive role in and of itself. But we also know now that the gut has a significant role in the inflammatory response in our body. Now, you may not know a lot about this, but what is really important to know is that inflammation in the body is the root cause of pretty much every physical and mental health condition. And inflammation, when people are thinking of inflammation, they think pain, they think redness, and you think, well, I don't have inflammation because I don't have pain. Pretty much all of us have a degree of inflammation going on in our body just because of the exposure to our Western lifestyles, our exposure to stress, our exposure to chemicals, our exposure to just general life, honestly. And, you know, you may not have what we would call, typical symptoms of inflammation, but maybe you have some fatigue, maybe you have some sleep disruption, maybe you have some, bloating. That can be a sign of inflammation. So, you know, the gut has a huge role in our inflammatory response. It also has a role in our immune response. I mean, our inflammatory response is actually part of our immune system, and there is a whole part of our immune system that resides in the gut, in the intestines. So that's really important. The gut has a role in our metabolism. It connects with other organs. I mean, we already know about the gut-brain connection, but it connects to many other organs outside of its system through vascular pathways, so through our blood vessels, through neural pathways, so our nervous system, and endocrine pathways, and networks, and, you know, other things it does. It tells us when we're hungry. It tells us when we're full through stretch receptors that are in the stomach, and also hormones that get released like ghrelin and leptin. Fun fact, yo-yo dieting, which many women that I work with that come and see me for sustainable long-term weight loss have often done many different diets, sometimes over their entire lives, and have lost weight, felt great, weight has come back on, weight gets lost again, weight comes back on, and that's called yo-yo dieting. And yo-yo dieting is known to produce chronically elevated ghrelin levels. And that means when that happens, that you feel hungry more often, and you feel hungry when actually you're not. And so your appetite is increasing. It makes you want to eat more food, but in fact, your body doesn't need more food. And that can lead to further weight gain. So that's a real issue. So the role of the gut is way beyond digesting food. And I haven't even touched on the microbiome yet, which I'll get into in a second. But firstly, I just wanted to outline some of the symptoms of poor gut health, because some of you may be experiencing some of these symptoms, and you may have been experiencing them for so long that they've become part of your normal, and you just put up with it, or you just think, oh, that's everyone's got, bloating. All my friends have got bloating, so therefore it's just normal. Or maybe it's frequent heartburn, or maybe excessive burping, nausea, vomiting even, abdominal pain, even if it's transient, excessive flatulence, a stomach that is growling all the time, constipation or diarrhea. And the thing is, people do put up with this for long, long periods of time. I mean, I've told this story a number of times about a client I used to have who was actually a GP, and she came to me for something else. And as I'm going through her initial consultation, when I do an initial consultation, I talk about everything. We talk about poo, we talk about periods, we talk about everything. And as I was going through my system of how I work to going through the different body systems, and she said to me that, when I showed her the poo chart, if you want to know what my poo chart looks like, just Google the Bristol stool chart. And she was between a 6 and a 7, so that's diarrhea. And I said, oh, when does that happen? And she's like, oh, that's every day. And and I asked her, had she had any investigations or anything like that? And she just had this for 7 years, mind you, 7 years at this point when I was speaking to her. And she said, oh, no, that's just my normal. Like, so offhand. It's just my normal. And I went, it's not really normal though, is it? And she's like, that's my normal. And she was quite insistent on that. And I just dropped her because I thought, okay, well, we will circle back to that at another appointment. So I kept going. And then she left. I got her to track her food journal, a food and mood journal, including poo. And when she came back to see me 2 weeks later, she was like, oh, that's really not normal, is it? So even healthcare professionals can get lulled into a sense that what is going on in their bodies is normal, and put up with it for many, many years. And I certainly, I had, I don't know if I've actually told my story of gut health. I'm not going to tell it today, but I had very significant gut health symptoms that, again, became part of my normal. They were embarrassing symptoms. I didn't want to go and talk to my GP, and I just thought it was normal. And it was only when I started studying nutrition and was in the student clinic that I realized that what I was experiencing really wasn't normal, and I was able to fix it very, very quickly. When you're working with people a practitioner that knows what to do, it is actually very quick to fix a lot of these gut health issues. So if you're experiencing some of these gut health issues, or even just one of them, and it's quite regular, I would recommend that you speak to somebody who actually knows how to manage these things. So I think that's all I want to say about that, is the symptoms of poor gut health. There are more. So if you're having other types of symptoms and you're wondering, well, is this a symptom of poor gut health? And that could be something like itching skin. It could be brain fog. It could be fatigue. These can be symptoms of poor gut health. So definitely reach out to someone. It could be me. I love talking to people. I love helping people. So, feel free to book in for a pre-screening call if you want to chat about how I might be able to help you. But yeah, moving on. What I haven't touched on yet, of course, is the microbiome. So microbiome, as you know, is that community of microorganisms such as we always talk about bacteria, right? But it includes viruses, it includes yeasts, it includes a microorganism called archaea. Many, 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 there's fungi in there as well. There's many, many microorganisms that make up our microbiome. And we have many microbiomes all over the body. Only a few years ago, they discovered an ear microbiome. And in the last I don't know, it's actually fairly recent, they've discovered a bone microbiome. And so, we have microbiomes all over our bodies. And in fact, and I've said this before, so it always blows my mind, no matter how many times I say it or think about it, is that we actually have more microorganisms, individual microorganisms living in our bodies than we have human cells. I'm going to say that again. We are more bacteria than we are human. That is essentially what that means. So rather than us having a microbiome, our microbiome has a human, and that's you. So it's really important that you look after your microbiome because it has a lot of control over your body. And one of the interesting things when it comes to your microbiome is we have to feed it. We have to feed our microbiome. And you know what our microbiome really loves? Loves fiber. Loves it. And the thing is with fiber, fiber is actually carbs. Fiber is carbohydrate. They're carbohydrates that haven't been digested through the system. So they end up in essentially your large intestine, undigested, and your microbiome loves it, feeds on it, and they ferment these carbs to form something called short-chain fatty acids. And these short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs, act as fuel for our intestinal cells. They have an anti-inflammatory action. They reduce our pathogenic bacteria or microorganisms, so the ones that cause illness in us. They help regulate our blood glucose levels. So they're really important. These SCFAs, short chain fatty acids. And diets that are low in fiber and high in protein and fat, and yes, I'm looking at you, keto, they upset the delicate balance of the microbiome and can lead to something called dysbiosis. So dysbiosis isn't a medical condition or anything like that. Dysbiosis just means an imbalance in the beneficial microorganisms versus the non-beneficial microorganisms. Now, we used to call these the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, but it doesn't really fully describe it. Because we have a lot of microorganisms in our microbiome that are not particularly beneficial. So we just call them non-beneficial, but they're useful in that they help keep everything in balance so we don't get what we call an overgrowth. And when we have this dysbiosis going on in the body, that can lead to symptoms. Sometimes there are no symptoms though, but it can lead to symptoms such as bloating, such as pain, such as burping, such as constipation, such as diarrhea, all of those sorts of things. Also food intolerances, joint pain, brain fog, fatigue, like so many things from this dysbiosis. It can also contribute to our leaky gut, or increased intestinal permeability is the medical term. And the thing is, we know this happens, particularly if people follow keto diets, even just for 3 months to 6 months, there are profound changes in the microbiome. And sometimes this can be a problem for people. And I cannot even tell you how many women and men have come through my clinic with significant gut issues and they've been on keto. And we know for sure from research that this is a problem for our gut health. And that's why if I'm working with clients generally in clinic, which I don't do that much of, to be honest, anymore, I'm really focusing on just the GLOW protocol because to me, it is gold standard. To me, it is, I don't want to offer anything less than that. So these days, unless you're kind of a family member of a current client, I really don't tend to see people outside of my program. But I have had a few people over the years that have wanted to drop weight quickly for an event, for example, for a wedding. And that is probably the only time I would suggest something like keto, is if you have a short-term weight loss goal that you want to bring in. But I would not recommend being on keto for more than kind of 4 weeks, to be honest. I think it's too many issues come up with it. Now, some people have been on it for years and they feel fantastic on it. And that's great. If it's working for you, that is great. I'm just saying for the majority of people that I've had contact with, they really struggle with keeping it going long term, and often they have pretty significant gut issues, which when we put them onto a more balanced diet, then those gut issues can be resolved. And let me get back to what I was talking about. I was talking about the fact that when you upset this delicate balance of the microbiome, that can lead to dysbiosis, and there's evidence that dysbiosis can lead to obesity. Being overweight or obese is associated with dysbiosis. Now, caveat here, the researchers are not sure whether this is a cause of obesity or a consequence of obesity. We need to do more research to actually work this out. But what we do know is that people that are overweight or obese tend to have dysbiosis. And, that will lead to those gut symptoms, which for most people, it reduces their quality of life. It's not nice to be having, stinky flatulence that is almost uncontrollable, or really discomfort in the body, or heartburn, or food intolerances, and those sorts of things. And this is why I love working with the GLOW protocol and improving people's gut health so much, is because it does really improve people's quality of life. And when we look at the data, the actual real data, every year, and I've got this from the CSIRO, every year, half of Australians, and it will be very similar for Americans. In fact, usually Americans are a little ahead of us in the numbers. So it's probably more than half of Americans and about half of Australians experience gut health problems. That's crazy, right? At least half. And 1 in 7 experience distressing gut health symptoms that they tend to manage themselves, because obviously there's a level of embarrassment with many people in discussing this sort of stuff with their healthcare professional. And often they manage it themselves using dietary changes such as food elimination. But if you don't know what you're doing with food elimination, your diet, again, can become really unbalanced. That can lead to nutrient deficiencies. That can lead to health problems. So it's really important to get professional help for this stuff. I did want to talk a little bit about how overweight or obese people are more likely to experience poor gut health. Now, we talked about this dysbiosis, or this imbalance in the microbiome, that we don't know whether it's a cause of overweight and obesity or whether it's a consequence. But the thing is, generally people who are consuming a poor quality, high fat diet on a regular basis will increase the amount of fat that the small intestine can absorb. Okay, so it actually changes the way the gut works, because the body's very adaptable. As I always say, we're wired for survival. So if having a lot of a high fat diet, for example, keto, the body will adjust for that and start absorbing more fat, and will also increase the efficiency of the body at transporting and storing dietary fat in fat tissue. This adaptation of the small intestine to absorb this fat doesn't necessarily mean that more energy is absorbed from one meal. Okay, what it might mean is that energy is absorbed faster, leading to a feeling of fullness for a shorter period of time and consuming more food overall. Also, on top of this, the small intestine of an obese person is more efficient at absorbing glucose into the bloodstream. So repeated or prolonged or excess glucose in the blood leads to higher levels of insulin in the blood and an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. And when you get into that kind of excess insulin in the blood, and if it's not working properly, which is what tends to happen, we get into this pre-diabetes stage with this insulin resistance, which is what this is talking about. And it's because the small intestine has adapted over time to this high sugar diet, essentially. And when we do get that elevated insulin and that insulin resistance, it's another blocker to weight loss. It's yet another blocker. So if you're carrying extra weight and you're eating a lot of sugar, your body is adapting to just absorb more and more of it because so much is coming through. And this will increase your risk of diabetes and also block your ability to lose weight. And it's also going to mess with your hunger and satiety hormones. So it becomes this whole, shitstorm of factors that are going to really make it difficult to lose weight. And that's when you really need to seek some professional advice so that you have an ideal, personalized protocol for yourself to get yourself to your ideal weight, because it's going to be extremely difficult to do this when you have all of these other factors at play and you don't understand it, right? You feel hungry all of the time. You eat, but what you're attracted to eating is sugar because you're hungry, and you're going to feel better if you eat sugar. And often it's something that's really easy to grab. And I've been there. I know what that's like. And it's really hard. There's habits, there's addictions, there's what do I want to say? Inappropriate? I don't know if that's quite the right word, but you know what I mean. Dysfunctional? It's probably a better word. Relationships with food. Like, there's a whole thing. It's not as simple as calories in, calories out, as you hear me banging on about. So I want to get back to the gut health aspect of this. And this one thing, I guess, if I want you to come away with today, it's about fiber. It's about fiber, because one thing that we know, and if you've worked with me or you've heard me bang on about it before, people tend to think with gut health, well, I just take some probiotics and that's going to fix everything. And I get people that are coming to me that are on these ones I get from the supermarket or the pharmacy that are like 10 billion probiotics in a capsule. That is not going to help. It might make you feel better initially, but long term, it's going to cause more problems, because our own microbiome that we've developed over time is the best one for us. And what we need to do is feed it. And what do we feed it with? Fiber. So, and when you see the statistics that 83% of Aussies, again, for my American listeners, it will be at least that, possibly more. 83% of Aussies don't meet the suggested daily target of fiber intake for good health. And most adults need to boost their fiber intake by around 30%, which is a lot. We're only looking at 30 to 40 grams a day of fiber. It's not, a huge amount, but that fiber feeds your microbiome. It reduces inflammation. It makes you feel fuller for longer. It really helps regulate your blood sugar levels. So many good things. So how do you get the fiber? It's actually really, really easy. Fruits, veggies, whole grains, bread, whole grain bread, I'm talking. And rye bread is the one that's really highly recommended because it does reduce inflammation in the body. It is low GI, which means that it's not going to spike your blood sugar. It's not going to cause insulin to be released in a sharp spike. And just things like increasing your fresh fruit and veggies, increasing your, things like legumes. They're so good for you. Legumes are things like lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, black beans, mung beans, all of those sorts of things. And if you don't know what to do with them, as I find a lot of the clients I work with have never really cooked them before. I'm a former vegetarian. I pretty much identify as pescatarian, but I still probably am at 90% vegetarian. So I do eat a lot of these things. And, legumes are so easy. They're so cheap in this current cost of living crisis that we're in. And just Google recipes for lentils, recipes for chickpeas. So easy. And yeah, you can do some really interesting and creative things with them. So yeah, I think that's all I want to talk about today. This is a big topic, and I want to explore more about this. It possibly won't be in next week's podcast. I'm really juggling a lot with my time at the moment. Next week, I'm hoping to do a fresh podcast for you. So if it's not next week, it'll be the week after that I'll do like a follow-up to this one. But I hope that's been really helpful for you. And if you would like to ask me a question that I can incorporate into another podcast, please message me at Susie Garden Wellness or email hello@susiegarden.com. If you've loved this episode or you listen to my podcast regularly, I would love for you to write me a review. It just means so much to me. I spend so much time making this podcast, and sometimes I feel like I'm just in a vacuum because I'm sitting here in my office just talking into a microphone. So yeah, if you could leave me a review, I would really love it. And if you're interested in improving your gut health, in balancing your hormones, particularly for my perimenopausal ladies, and you're wanting to reach, a weight loss goal for yourself this year, then do it now. Just contact me, reach out. I would love to have a chat and see how we could work together. Have a lovely day. I'll be back on Thursday with Q&A, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Ageless and Awesome podcast. If you liked today's episode, please make sure you click the little plus button if you're on Apple Podcasts, or the follow button if you're on Spotify, so that you can get each new episode delivered to you every single week. If you like free stuff, and who doesn't, then head over to susiegarden.com and grab my 8 essential age-defying secrets every woman over 40 should know right now. Or if you'd like to continue the discussion, head over to Instagram and DM me at Susie Garden Wellness. I'd love to connect with you.